Dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, I'll just take you through what I'm going to be doing in my session. It's about playing it forward, and what we can't use is the tools of the oppressor to dismantle the house. We need to use tools that are rooted in the best of our culture and know about the experiences that we've had as a way of repairing the damage that's happened to us. We've had some excellent presentations which have talked about gaining compensation for our experiences. But unless we're healed as people who will use that money to further damage ourselves, we'll either use that money to invest in drugs to be able to heal the pain and numb the pain, or we'll give that money back to the oppressor in terms of trying to buy ourselves expensive items to make up for the despirited sense of self that this issue has brought to our community. So what we're looking at is about how we can actually create wellness, but use the Windrush spirit of wellness, because our generation before us have been through traumas before, so how we can draw on the best of their experiences to get us through the current experiences and to then teach us what we can do when the next generation faces the next way in which they attack our sense of self. And one of the tools that we'll be talking about is emotional emancipation circles, and I think it really dovetails nicely into what Jackie was saying in her presentation, in that we need community healing. And the emotional emancipation circles is a community healing method that's been put together by the Association of Black Psychologists, using the best of African culture as a way of dealing with situations just like this. If we look about what's happened to our ancestors and then compare it to what's happened to us today, okay, our ancestors were enslaved, and that generated the fear that they were going to be sold on to another plantation, public humiliation of whipping, and that they were going to be sent away from their family at any time. If we look across to what's happened to the Windrush generation, there's the loss of citizenship, so the fear that they're going to be sent away at any time. That the public humiliation for some people of having to share very personal information with other people or with the community to have campaigns so that they can actually stay. If you look at our ancestors, the 1950s, 1960s, there were signs up which said no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. There was the colour bar, and there was the lack of access to housing, the means of survival, and a sense of belonging. If we now look in 2019, what's happening to the Windrush generation, the loss of housing, the loss of security, the loss of access to healthcare, the loss of means of survival. Again, we've seen the parallels to say that the game remains the same, but the tools used change. We then find that as a black community, we're fighting just to be, yes, just to stay in this country, whereas other communities can put that energy into progressing themselves and into building themselves. We've then got to have the best of our minds and our brains on issues such as this. And what we find is that, and again, it was exactly what happened to our previous generation. We did all the work to build the West, that's what our ancestors did, and had no credit. And what we find is that they were, their dreams were dashed, or to some extent it went to the next generation to say that, okay, then it can give us the energy to overcome. But that happened to the previous generation, the Windrush generation. Again, they did all the work to rebuild Britain after the Second World War. Now they're due their pensions, they're being sent away. And our ancestors were not allowed to travel, not free, and there's a generation in this country that are fearing that if they travel, they may not be allowed back into this country. So again, the restrictions on our movement. So if we look at an African-centred formulation, a way of understanding what's happening to us, Wayne Noble talks about psychic terrorism. This is what's happening when our communities are fearing our elders being sold and sent away at any time. And it's not by mistake that they're doing this. It's a way of keeping our community oppressed. It's ethnic cleansing, because if you destroy the family, then you destroy the support system for the next generation. So who's going to be there to do the babysitting? Who's going to be there to pass on the wisdom and the counselling within our communities if our elders are sent away? So it's a way of breaking down the family, and then they're not as secure, not as supported, and then they end up doing the behavioural problems that get them into problems with the criminal justice system at times. And we ties up our energy with fighting Martha, an overseer again, yeah? And even then thanking Martha for not separating from our family again. So it's the same things happening to us. So what's the impact on us at an emotional level and a behavioural level? Attachment issues. Because are you really going to get your grandchildren to attach to their grandparents if at any time they can be sent away? Yeah? And then when you have attachment problems in the family, you then don't have the secure sense of self, which builds a resilience, which then can help to withstand further attacks. It means that people get fear, anxiety, shame, depression, low mood, anger, high blood pressure, even fighting the system to be able to stay. We heard a report of somebody fighting for 8 years. 8 years of high blood pressure in some cases, and stress. It can make some people harsh to others because the world's been harsh to them, but it can also make some people have increased compassion. But that compassion can be an issue in that they can burn themselves out, because if you're compassionate to many issues and you're not having a kind of like a sense of how to keep yourself going through that, you can become burnt out. There's a psychological trauma that happens to this generation, but also there's the field of epigenetics that we say that it happens to the next generation as well. They then have that psychological trauma. And it can turn on the genes for illnesses. So we hear about a lot of the people gaining cancer or other health problems. The stress can actually turn that on. Yeah? So if we then look at the spirit of Windrush and wellness, what is it? It's the spirit that helped our parents and our grandparents through the harsh winters in the UK. It's the spirit that helped them nurse others and build the NHS when others weren't caring for them. It's a spirit that helped our ancestors through enslavement and kept them through it. And it's the spirit that helped our ancestors through the Middle Passage, because all of us here are the descendants of the best. We were the ones who survived the harsh conditions. So we've got that resilience in us. And what we need to do is have techniques to tap into that resilience when times get hard. So we think the African in us that they couldn't kill, that was the spirit of moving to the beat. Yes? So our music is important in what keeps us alive, what keeps us energized, and keeps us being able to have different recovery methods to be able to withstand the pressures of today. The community, the parties that they had in the 1950s and 60s, again, is a way of how do we build ourselves to come together. We had an excellent presentation on the food, the soul food, the Saturday soup. We hear about people taking garlic tablets, for example, but if you actually season your food with a lot of these seasonings, you don't need to take them as supplements. The proverbs, the stories of wisdom that are passed on. So proverbs such as it takes one hand to wash the other. Can anybody think of any proverbs or Nancy stories? Yeah? All right then, yeah. And maybe that's what we need to think about our oppressors, that sometimes it's not about tying up our energy in getting punishment for them, but it's about kind of saying that, well, there'll be a system for that, yes? It may be the God, it may be the Spirit that sorts them out, and we can put that energy into recovery methods for us.
Sometimes you have to hold the light for the devil to see.
All right, yes. And that's exactly what we're doing today. We're holding the light for the devil to see.
Yeah, every time.
Yeah?
But higher the mountain he climbs,
the more he's exposed. And that's exactly what they've done as well. Thank you. It's the Anansi stories, that the stories of the Anansi, the little spider, yes, who out-tricked the mighty. And that's sometimes what we've got to hold on to, and that's what the pathway is going to be for us. We've got to keep the culture alive, so the cricket, the athletics, we've got to come together. We can't do the Norbin Tebbit test and say that, well, let's support England, thinking that England will support us. It doesn't work like that. We've got to take time to actually support our own culture and invest in keeping our culture going. The faith, the spirituality, the religious practices and beliefs that kept our previous generation saying things will get better. Everything has a season. So yes, things may be bad today, but it doesn't mean it will carry on. And we've got to have the faith that will keep us going, that we can keep fighting. And we've got to remember our successful campaigns. Nobody's ever given us anything for nothing. They didn't stop enslavement because one day they woke up and thought, well, we've been bad and we'll stop being bad. So the way forward, we need to out-reflect. We need to take time out like this to reflect on where we are. We need to out-grind our oppressors. So we've got to out-plan. Those who want peace have got to plan just as much as those who want war. We've got to out-strategize. We've got to out-educate ourselves, because education is preparation. And we've got to prepare for the oppressor, because, as I said, the game remains the same, but the tools that they use changes. So one of these strategies that we've developed is emotional emancipation circles. The Association of Black Psychologists and the Community Healing Network developed a template for community healing for us, by us,